All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble. Of course, I do see that chat is working. Shilly Willy, good morning, Clankers from Ohio. Frob Squid, morning or evening, as is my case. And Mrs. Tag saying, I used to claim nothing could offend me. After either carrying or nursing children for over 6 years, the term chest feeding did it for me. Lol. The Joker Ace saying clank as well. So we'll get right into it. Making sure that we're actually live on Rumble is always an important step of the day. The Twitter audience cannot see what you are saying, although I know that you are saying things on the live stream probably by now. Of course, I don't have a second monitor yet as part of my setup. So we've got lots and lots of good shit to cover today. You got John Kerry. He's taking the war on farmers from the Netherlands and a few other countries to the United States. He looked at what Ruto was doing here, and he said, that's a good idea. Let's screw with a bunch of farmers and potentially face protests as the result of that. So he's arguing for drastic transformation of the farming sector. We'll talk about the debt ceiling. Of course, that's a big thing. I have my thoughts with regards to the so-called deal that was struck between unipartyist Kevin McCarthy, the turncoat and traitor, and unipartyist Joe Biden, the demented vegetable, currently claiming the stewardship of the United States. He's not doing a good job as steward because he has not really taken care of the throne until somebody who comes along that's actually capable of an original thought, capable of determining what they're eating for dinner. Of course, Joe Biden's wife makes sure that he gets his bran muffin, his prune smoothie, and he gets a nice warm nap, basically late in the afternoon. And then he can go to sleep after he has his third bowel movement of the day. That's basically Joe Biden in a nutshell. And also the East Palestine cover-up continues. It's something that's gone under the radar for a lot of content creators, but I've been keeping up actually with the East Palestine derailment. There is some concerning news with regards to East Palestine. There appears to be a difference, and this is so surprising, between the EPA's findings in regards to potential chemicals in the water, chemicals in the soil, and private findings. Why am I not surprised about that? For political reasons, largely, of course. Sparky, Clank Nation rules. Yes, we do. We rule a large chunk of Africa on Pixel Planet as well. Opinionated Junkie, happy Memorial Day. Yeah, it's Memorial Day. Over here, there was some sort of Christian. It was Ascension Day yesterday. All the stores were closed. And today they didn't open till noon. I guess the idea is that Catholics get drunk on their holidays and can't come into work early in the morning because they're hungover or something. It's actually interesting. The Netherlands is one of the most atheistic countries in the world, and yet there's a hell of a lot of Christian holidays. So thanks, Jesus. I couldn't get my tonic water and limes the other day. I couldn't get pizza. We had to eat sushi. We all the restaurants were open. We had to get sushi. I had a poke bowl with unagi, which is eel, which is my favorite. And I also ordered a bunch of other sushi. I didn't realize how much was in the poke bowl. So I was eating on that most of the night. A little bit bloated when you go to bed. You're farting around under the sheets. It's a Dutch oven. Anyway, we'll get right into the first news of the day. Verbatim, John Kerry says U.S. farmers must radically transform food production to meet net zero emissions goals by 2030, which won't happen. I'll tell you what this is. It's a grift. Emission zero is not capable of being achieved. There are too many people in the world with too many needs. Even if you radically reduce the quality of life, even for the super rich, which John Kerry is one of, you would not get to net zero emissions. It's impossible. You can use terra preta. You can use biochar to help to compensate somewhat. You can also inject liquefied CO2 into rock formations, although it's not really necessary or proper because CO2 literally helps plants grow. What we need to do is we need to get rid of the Monsantos of the world, get rid of the petrochemical industry and its involvement with agriculture, go back to crop rotation, heirloom crops, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't make money, now does it? If you wanted to have healthier crops, you wanted to have healthier people, that's what you would do. The reason that they don't suggest that, even though it would also take care of the problem of erosion, for the most part at least, and make the population healthier, solving for some of the obesity crisis, which we'll talk about later in the context of New York City, is because it's not profitable. If you can't make profit on it, of course, you're not going to do it. John Kerry's in it for the money. The people who fund people like John Kerry are in it for the money. And so it's bullshit. Reductions in fertilizer, land use, which means less farmers and or less land being farmed, and cows. So, you know, the John Kerry can have filet mignon. You can have a hamburger twice a year, basically. Are a big push by the activists who seek to reduce emissions created by food production. One idea that has been put forth to reduce methane emissions caused by cows is to shift to eating bugs instead. Another idea is to feed cows bugs to reduce fertilizer emissions generated by growing food for cows. Yes, the cows will be, animal cruelty laws aside, feeding them handfuls of mealyworms. Sounds really great. Kerry said the agriculture sector needs innovation now more than ever. We're facing record malnutrition. Yeah, and you're trying to make it worse by depriving people of basic staple foods. But at a time when agriculture, more than in any other sector, is suffering from the impacts of the climate crisis. Where? In what way? Oh my God, there was a flood. Those never happened before the late pre-modern period, before the rise of coal and Eli Whitney. Anyway, Kerry goes on and rants about this. And of course, you'll notice that all of the solutions to the crisis are NIMBYism. John Kerry has his private jet. He has his multiple very large homes. He has his hundreds of millions, I think, of dollars literally himself, and is also part of the Heinz heirage. And so they have, I think, billions of dollars. He's got his. Don't worry, he can afford to raise his own cattle. If there's ever a beef shortage, he is insulated from that. But you should not have too many hamburgers, everyone. You shouldn't be able to have a steak. It's terrible. Terrible for the environment to do exactly what the rich do every single day. They're, by the way, doing the same exact thing in the Netherlands. Farmers aren't allowed to farm. 3,000 farmers are probably going to have their land stolen from them soon by Mark Rutte and his rabble. That's why the largest political party in the country by popular vote was the Tractor Party. Enjoy having exactly the same thing happen in the United States. There are a hell of a lot of farmers there. Egbert Bootwhistle. Taliban just invaded Iran, took a few towns. Sus? I've seen claims that the Taliban has invaded Iran. I have not seen any verification because the video that's being posted with regards to that appears to be dated several years ago, actually. So we need a fact check on that. If somebody has better info, they can always DM me on Twitter. Eben Wrong. Sticks, do you know about Sam Hyde's current project Fish Tank Live? It started off fun, but has devolved into a depraved degradation porn, demonic stuff. I know nothing about that. I don't even know where Sam Hyde uploads, actually. I know he mentioned me at one point, and people thought that was funny. It seems like he has some interesting content. He's definitely meme-worthy, so... As opposed to the leftoids of the world, who are boring, like the ones that are criticizing Pink Floyd and The Wall right now, who apparently never saw the movie or listened to the album. That's very interesting. I guess they're too busy listening to Justin Bieber. Oh, wait, he's probably not woke enough either. He was hanging around with Kanye and Marilyn Manson a couple of years ago. Who would they listen to then? Even Taylor Swift would probably be far right by their standards, so who the fucking knows? Yes, U.S. farmers have guns, but the militia is lawful, so they tend not to use them. By the way, speaking of the lawful militia, there is a link pinned at the top of chat if you're watching on YouTube and cross-platform in the description. I have written a new booklet. It's actually on debating tips with regards to gun rights, and it's one that I'm very proud of. I put a lot of effort into making sure to make it as pithy and as reasonable as possible. And the whole idea is to be like a debate companion on the gun rights debate, which I know some of you will say, well, self-evidently, we don't have to have the debate at all. All gun control is unconstitutional. I agree with you. Don't worry. I point this out in the text several times. But you still have to have that debate if you want to win over people who are fence straddling. So people who say, well, we just need a little more gun control, the FUDs, basically, or more moderate liberals, people who think, well, we need to save the children, etc. I give points about weak and strong arguments and why they're weak and strong with regards to supporting the activities of the lawful militia. I think that a lot of you will enjoy the work, and I do strongly recommend it, not simply because I happen to be the author who's selling it. So yeah, link up at top if you're watching on YouTube, and in the description on every platform. Batman, sticks clanketh thy spoon. I don't have a spoon at the moment. I was drinking V8. It looks like drinking blood, so it's sort of vampiric and cool. You know, V8 is one of the greatest things ever. You make soup with it, actually. Paul Ross, hey Sticks, if you had to guess, when do you think the second pandemic will start? As I warned of before, you know, with the inevitable pandemic that we just suffered through, which was partially a human response pandemic, as opposed to a disease itself, roughly 100 years from now. Probably a little bit less because of the greater number of people in the world. If it happens sooner, then that would be sus. Josh, on Gab, I posted a comparison of Disney to the Skaven of Warhammer. Mickey Skaven to spread the word. D. Good morning, Sticks. Thoughts on DeSantis defunding and abolishing the IRS? Wishing you the best from Austin, Texas. I would love to abolish the IRS. I don't think that he would have the cojones to do it. We'll talk about DeSantis a little bit later. King of Biltong, good morning from Anton's in Roanoke, Texas. Hashtag Clank Nation. Many more meat funds every single day. Total Combustion over on Rumble. Imagine an alternate universe where Stick says tink instead of clank. Yeah, you can tink your spoon. It'd have to be a smaller spoon on fine china, of course. Anyway, enough about John Kerry and climate alarmism and their stupidity. Again, they're targeting farmers. They're going to try to do the same thing that they're doing in the Netherlands. Kerry literally refers to that. By the way, I see a lot of community notes fact-checking on Twitter saying, well, no, Kerry didn't say that they wanted to stop people from farming. Read the fucking article. Reducing land usage means, hey, we're farming less. We've got 10 acres less of beetroots this year. We have 20 acres less of cattle pasture this year. It is objective. He's literally saying these things. You can look at clips of him saying exactly that. So it's nitpicking, linguistic nitpicking. Straight up metal detecting, $1, no comment. Thank you very much. Next news story. This is the big one that a lot of people are talking about right now. Personally, I think that the presumptive incoming attack on U.S. agriculture and the Eastern Palestine derailment are both more important. But I'm going to talk about this anyway, as I have in a standalone video, etc. McCarthy and Biden have effectively agreed on a debt deal. This is to prevent default. They had negotiations for some time after Biden stopped pretending that he wasn't going to have them. I correctly predicted that Biden would come to the table because it was inevitable he would come to the table. He was holding out long enough to make it plausible that they worked deep in the night for several weeks. And right up against the deadline, all of a sudden they have a deal, which is basically Biden's deal with a couple of nonsensical things attached, like a small reduction in the IRS expansion that, you know, the IRS will be weaponized for political purposes, Lois Lerner style. A slight increase in the stringency with regards to food stamps. This was apparently, that was Kevin McCarthy's main priority. He wants to take food stamps away from people as much as possible. Although the benefits are extended to more people as well, when you count the veterans and the homeless or largely unhomed that are worked into the bill. So actually more people will end up on food stamps than before. And Republicans can thank principled conservative Kevin McCarthy for that. Anyway, Chip Roy and Massey and a bunch of others, Rand Paul notably now as well, are against this deal. They're saying that they're not in favor of it. I would encourage everyone, if you have a Republican in the House or Senate from your state, write them, call them, send an email, do whatever you can. Get them to hold the line against this deal. It would be better to default than to pass this massive amount of spending, number one, with a massive expansion of a federal bureau that should not be expanded. It should be reduced or abolished. It could be streamlined in the former. In the latter, you could move to an Estonian tax system and have it literally online. There are countries that do that. There's no reason to allow Biden to expand an IRS that he clearly intends to weaponize. There's no reason for the enormous amount of additional discretionary spending. And one of the main things that McCarthy pretended he was interested in, which was clawing back hundreds of billions of unspent discretionary COVID funds, now that that emergency has been officially and legally declared to have ended months ago, That's not even addressed. Hundreds of billions of dollars were on the table, there for the grabbing. Well, they're going to be used for wokeness by the states. They'll build another ESG study hall on one of their state university campuses or something like that. So McCarthy has failed. At least he's failed the American people. He didn't fail his masters, though. Now, that was always the point. The Uniparty wants basically Biden's budget. It vastly expands spending in multiple ways. It punts the student loan debt forgiveness grift to the courts, where it will probably be struck down, but we'll see what happens. That allows him to blame the Supreme Court in the end of the Trump Supreme Court. That's why we need to expand the court. They blocked my student loan debt forgiveness grift and things like that. I mean, the entire thing stinks to high hell. It's clear that McCarthy and Biden didn't really negotiate so much as they agreed in principle on day one. This is how we're going to do things. I wouldn't be surprised if McCarthy went to Biden before and said, look, we're going to pretend to strong arm you. We're going to put forth a bunch of shit that we don't even really want. But we got to give some red meat to our base because, you know, the grifters in the Uniparty and with an R after the name need to get reelected and not get primaried out by MAGA candidates. So you're going to have to give us a little bit of something. I have to have something to show for it. And they shook hands and said, okay, Biden, you pretend to be reluctant and wait till the last minute. And then miraculously we'll hammer out a deal a couple of weeks before the debt deadline looms. Coincidental timing. Yeah, it's amazing how these things happen over and over. It's a pig in a poke. It's selling the United States economy down the river. It should not be passed. I stand completely with the MAGA Republicans and the handful of left-wing Democrats, oddly enough, who oppose this deal. It's stupid. It's wasteful spending in every possible sense of the word. It's better not to negotiate at all. If in the end the compromise within politics is important, it's a good thing in general. But when that compromise is unacceptable, it should not be passed. This kind of bill is absolutely stupid in every possible way. 80% of the IRS expansion is intact. It's basically putting a cap on it for 2 years, and then then the expansion goes on as normal. Okay, so you have 80% of the political abuse that the IRS was going to be used to levy against law-abiding American citizens. Wonderful. That's a great, McCarthy. You really did your job. I oppose the debt deal. I would rather the United States default. It would be better. Okay, let the bottom drop out. Put true pressure on the political parties to hammer out something that's actually sensible. Let a default happen. And by the way, I would point out, again, I will say this as a Trump supporter, he encouraged effectively the same thing. Now, there are some people, DeSantis fans mainly right now, saying, well, Donald Trump endorsed Kevin McCarthy, for which I criticized him, you'll remember at the time, by the way, much like with the American Rescue Act and a few other things. That being said, apples to oranges. He did come out more than a week ago and say that the Republicans should not agree to any deal, should denounce the very concept unless they can get largely what they want. McCarthy got 1 out of the 10 asks, and that one is half-assed. That's all he got. Some negotiations. He's a clear unipartyist. And by the way, when Kevin McCarthy is in there as Speaker of the House, you can expect shenanigans from the Republican Party in the primaries and the general election through this coming election season. Paul Ross. Gates, Biden, and now even Tedros claim the second pandemic is coming soon. We'll see. Yeah, and that would be sus as fuck. And I would be glad to point that out based on historical timelines. Simple Logic 90. Dude, didn't know your dad was a Marine. Also as a vet, I'm annoyed that like a college graduate, people just assume you know what you're doing. Plenty of turd vets and college degree holders. Yes, he was a sergeant in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. So he doesn't like to talk about a lot of aspects of that, by the way. I can imagine why. I assume it involves killing people or getting injured or seeing people literally vaporized by napalm or something like that. So, you know, interesting stories. When he's on his deathbed, hopefully long from now, I'll really grill him. Michael Krasnowski, do you believe that McCarthy will get kicked out? No, unfortunately. They changed the rule to one person can incite a vacate vote. Yeah, but who's going to vote to out him? It'll be the MAGA Republicans, but they don't have a majority of Republicans capable of outing him. And the Democrats that would otherwise climb on board are happy with this deal, by and large. They'll defend him. It's the Uniparty getting its way. Mr. Twisted Frenzy. Hey, Sticks, I've been meaning to ask, but what's the story with the Dutch government seizing farmers' land? I thought this was to put an end when the Farmers' Party won last election, or did I misunderstand something? That's the backlash from what they're trying to do. They're trying to confiscate 3,000 farms totaling God knows how many hundreds of thousands of acres, mainly cattle farms, to let them go fallow and be developed into basically nature preserves to coincide with EU emissions rules, because the Netherlands is a net exporter of crops. It's the second largest food exporter in the entire world. They should not go along with it. If the EU presses the issue, they should leave the EU, in my opinion. The Netherlands is a bright enough country to stand on its own, just like the UK is stable. Everything was supposed to collapse in the UK when Brexit happened. Has it? No. They've suffered from the same ups and downs as every other country in the world, lockdownerism and stuff like that. But they're still there. They still have diplomatic capabilities. What this really is the Germans and the French bitching about the Dutch being better at growing food than them. And Mark Rutte is the globalist shill he is. He's gone right along with it. We'll see if the Tractor Party can scrape things together to stop it from happening. Fantech0104, why does Trump endorse rhinos such as McCarthy? Happens all the time. Politics makes very strange bedfellows. You'll notice that his former VP was Mike Pence, so he doesn't always necessarily make decisions that I agree with regards to the people he surrounds himself with, but I'm still Trump 2024. Starlight Gemini, good morning. Sticksama in 720p, HD Clank. Do you meditate? Yes. And is the universe sentient in any way? Also, hit like for the stream, you weebs. I don't know if the universe is sentient. I keep an open mind on such broad declarations, I suppose. SS Kennedy over on Rumble. The attack on farming is a primary tenet of UN Agenda 21 and the Global Biodiversity Treaty. You mean Bolshevik Treaty, really, which says most human activity, including farming, is unsustainable. Well, current farming, I would agree. Factory farming and chem-intensive farming, where you dump fertilizer on the field over and over, monoculture it, as opposed to rotating crops and stuff, is unsustainable. That is true. Mexico, by the way, just decided to scrap that basic premise and go back to the old way of farming corn, for example, which means corn farmers in the United States are pissed because they may not be able to export to Mexico anymore. That makes sense. In my garden, I don't use chemical fertilizer. I use azomite and kelp meal and stuff like that, and it works just fine. And for larger scale agriculture, yes, farmers could have, they would have to charge slightly higher prices per unit in order to produce the same food with older methods. But the older methods are better. That being said, what Kerry is suggesting is not going back to rotational farming and composting and manure and stuff like that. He's suggesting leaving large swaths of the world that are capable of being farmed, unfarmed, and reducing the amount of food that people are privy to, basically putting them back in their place. Now, it won't affect John Kerry. He can always buy his own farm and do whatever he wants. Call it his own personal property. He can have as many cows as he wants. It's the NIMBYism, the hypocrisy that I oppose. I would say that we should stop factory farming. All animals should be free range. It's healthier. Long term, it's healthier for people as well. Yeah, that means higher meat prices. That's okay. I have no problem with that. It's still available. It's not vilified. It's available to the general population. Current farming is unsustainable, but not for the reasons that the globalists are telling you. We're also running out of phosphate deposits that are easily mined. So, yeah, as far as those French fries you like to eat, those may be hard to come by in 20 or 30 years. I've warned about that too. It's a looming disaster with an agriculture that literally nobody fucking talks about. You realize that we're running low on phosphate deposits that can actually be mined reliably. Gokai Silver, howdy Sticks, first time catching you live. Fitting that it is here on Rumble. Clank, clank. Lots of clanking today. Simple Logic 90. Luckily for us in Indiana, we do crop rotation. Literally, my neighborhood is right next to the farm, and it's corn one year and soybeans the next. Yeah, crop rotation, terra preta, lasagna gardening, composting, all of these great things that can be done in hugelculture. So many ways to grow things. Somehow, the United States has a unique problem in the grain belt with regards to this, by the way. We're running low on phosphates. People are going to miss those fucking French fries, and the Irish will suffer all over again because there's no potatoes around. They'll have to switch to cabbage. They'll be very sad people. Anyway, next news story. EPA says soil in East Palestine looks really good. I believe you totally. You're not covering for Pete Buttigieg's train riding asshole. But some see a disconnect with their health. Yeah, the whole hacking up blood and coughing repeatedly part, probably has something to do with their appraisal. The EPA is claiming that everything's fine in East Palestine. And officials have gone there and said, like, the cleanup effort itself is going along fairly smoothly. The wreckage is gone. Things have been sort of, dredged out and recovered. That side is fine. The problem is most of that pollutant that was released during the burning of the chemicals on board the train, they didn't settle within a 100-yard radius of the wreckage now, did they? They went up in the air because smoke rises. Believe it or not, Pete Buttigieg needs to be aware of this. Somebody type up a report and email it to him, and then they go downwind. And private testing has been done in soil samples, both shallow and deep, certainly water samples, and have been found to be contaminated. Now, if you're talking about a contamination level of 2 parts per quadrillion or something above the standard limit, it's probably not a problem. We're seeing more than that. And again, when the private results all seem to countermand the EPA's results, I smell a fucking dead rat. There's something seriously wrong with that. If people are suffering from medical conditions, and I hope, anyone in East Palestine area, I hope you took my advice and immediately got a physical. Because if you were exposed to chemicals and all and you didn't, then you can't necessarily prove at this point, so late in the game, that it was the East Palestine train derailment that caused them. If you were perfectly healthy before this happened or like a day after, and then within 2 weeks, all of a sudden your liver started to fail, you may have a legal case. And I want clankers to get rich. I want you to be wealthy. It helps me as well. Down the line, you will note when people send superchats or buy books. I want you to be safe and healthy. East Palestine, like the rail authority there, they don't want you to be healthy. They say, suck shit, peasant. The government clearly doesn't care. Pete Buttigieg only even showed up at the wreckage reluctantly in full OSHA gear, by the way, and literally looked like the poster boy for OSHA. It was almost as good as the Chaz Garden. Only showed up because Donald Trump went there. He only showed up because Donald Trump went there and gave people bottled water and cleaning supplies and shit, which it is just a token. It was literally politically motivated, of course, but it certainly outshined the Biden admin. Koza shared his test results with the Allegheny Front. This is for his urinalysis. I have vinyl chloride in my urine, he says, as well as chemist's analysis, which said Koza had metabolites of vinyl chloride in his urine, indicating he could be exposed to the chemical on a daily basis. Vinyl chloride exposure could come from smoking, although levels in tobacco smoke are very low, according to the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry at the CDC. Koza says he smokes half a pack a day, slightly undermining any lawsuit that he could launch, by the way, but says it would take a lot more than that to create the levels of vinyl chloride found in his results, which I believe. Vinyl chloride metabolites were also found in Linda Murphy's urinalysis. I have reasons to have concerns, she said. Murphy, who lives 2.8 miles from the derailment site, didn't share her results, which means probably there's a consultation with a lawyer going on at the moment. So vinyl chloride is there. How much there is up for debate, but that's a debate that needs to be had. And here's my problem. The EPA comes and does its testing, is probably carefully selecting locations to test that they know will have lower contamination levels. I do declare that that's likely. They don't want a scandal. They don't want a big environmental scandal to trouble their boss, especially the transport secretary, adjacent, of course, to some of the EPA's operations. They don't want to have to fucking do any work. So they show up and they say, well, they have someone go in preliminarily and do tests, and they find the places that have the lowest concentration. They go and retest them for the books. That's probably what they're doing, which is why these people apparently have actually been exposed to this. They're doing their own private digging around in the soil, testing water. Do you remember seeing a bunch of footage from the general area in East Palestine the day after the derailment, and there were a shit ton of dead fish there? Some of those videos are real. They can be verified. It's actually real. It's not somebody trolling by taking 5-year-old footage of somebody at their local creek after the arsenic mine overloaded or during a storm or something. It is actually East Palestine, and it is actually right after the rail derailment. I can believe that these people are having health issues. Some of it's psychological, of course. You think you're being exposed to chemicals, then you smell, Lysol or something, and it goes into your brain, and then you start manifesting symptoms. That's possible. But I don't think it accounts for all of the problems that are being seen there. It seems to be relatively common. Certainly right after the disaster, it was much more common. It's like a dusty film is all over our house, and all of a sudden, everyone started having breathing problems. I think it might be linked to the chemical disaster that happened half a mile away. What do you think? The EPA says, no, everything's perfectly fine. I would point out as well that when we analyze such a thing, and it is being covered up by the legacy media for political reasons, there's another thing to keep in mind. Even if the contamination were just short-lived, so for the first few weeks, the vinyl chloride, et cetera, and it was more than vinyl chloride, by the way, is there. And now it's dissipated. It's faded into the background. Nature has done what it usually does, and over time it will. That doesn't mean people weren't exposed to it. It doesn't mean that that isn't still a problem. Even if they were only exposed to excessive amounts of this particular chemical for, let's say, a couple weeks or a month, it raises their cancer risk. It raises their risk of at least short-term health complications. Maybe it racks up medical bills. They should be given reparations for what happened. Actual living people that actually suffered some sort of grievance have a right to such things. Scott Foradora, clank your piddly boots, spank your whittly woots, toot your fliddly flutes while playing the diggery doots. The Patriot Cairo, June Groom is almost here. We're about to be subjected to 30 days of propaganda promoting the MAP lifestyle. I can't read the first part. I think that might run afoul of YouTube TOS. The MAP lifestyle, sexual proclivity does not matter. Yep, it's almost Pride Month, which means that all the corporate brands will put a rainbow avatar only on their English-speaking page. Absolutely never on the ones that are in Arabic or Hindi. Sparky Sticks, do freedom fries need phosphate? Maybe we could switch to growing freedom fries from growing French fries. Funny story. You remember after 9/11 how when France didn't join the coalition of the willing, a lot of people were in restaurants were relabeling them freedom fries and dumping expensive French wine out in the gutter, which made no sense. It's like, you already fucking bought it. You might as well just fucking drink it. There was a restaurant until 2 years ago. It's gone out of business, unfortunately, called Seward's in Rutland, Vermont. And it's the sort of restaurant, it was like modeled on an old-fashioned diner and had been there since, I think, the early 60s or 50s or something. And it used to be attached to a dairy. So this is the place where Joe Biden and his fellow greasers would go and try to beat up corn pop. Literally straight out of a movie from the 50s or something. Nice place, by the way. It had really good veggie burgers and extremely good fucking French fries. Anyway, their French fries were labeled freedom fries. Most places by 2005 or thereabouts, they put it back to French fries. Seward's never did. I hope that somebody in Rutland has an old menu from Seward's that I can buy off of them as a collector's piece, because I guarantee that the menu hadn't changed at all. Even as late as 2020 or whenever it closed, it would still be freedom fries. And I thought that was very funny. And you should have seen their job application. I applied for a job there once. Didn't get a call back. I wonder why. And there was one, how the fuck did they word it? It was something like, have you any mental or physical incapabilities that may render you unable to do a work or something like that? And the way that it was worded was so antiquated. It was like my grandpa probably still had a full head of flush hair when this menu was, when the job application was written up, and they never changed it. And it was like the fucking funniest thing I've ever seen. Good restaurant, though. I will give them props. The beer battered fries were, oh my God, so good. And their hot dogs were fucking great as well. You get a chili dog, and they were properly made, by the way, and cheap. Egbert Boot Whistle, do you think Florida migration a possible bubble? No, I think a lot of the people moving to Florida are moving there permanently. A lot of people to Texas, too. That Indian dude, Taliban attacking Iran using American equipment, unintentional 4D chess move by the CIA. You're the second person to mention that, but all I'm seeing is a clip that was actually, it was community noted, that was shown to be actually several years old. And it shows a Taliban training exercise. So I don't know if that's the case, I'll definitely cover it tomorrow. Starlight Gemini, will we be prepared for the honk? Will they get away with it again? And your thoughts on Arizona when it comes to honk. Arizona's trying. We'll see what happens. Several other states have been successful, several others not so successful in preventing fortification in the future. I do not know what will happen. I do know that I'll be voting for Trump, though. I'd rather him run from a jail cell, nominate him anyway, just to give a big fucking fuck you to the establishment. I'd much rather do that than stand down and just say, well, we had a good run. Let's bow our heads solemnly, step back onto the stage with a little bit of a sigh, thinking of the better days that will never happen again. Not willing to do that. Not going to happen. Trump is probably the only person capable of pulling it off, by the way. Brian Tom Zach, Sticks Rules. Please check out my Memorial Day Remembrance video. Music by Motorhead. We must never forget on Rumble and on YouTube. Straight up metal detecting channel. Self shout out over on Rumble. And Vicentius 1959. Does John Kerry's downsize apply to all the CCP farms here in the U.S.? Semper Fi. Who knows? I don't think it'll apply to Bill Gates' farms, though, where he puts up labs to grow lab-grown meat that'll probably fuck you up, at least gastrointestinally, possibly worse. By the way, I do solemnly pledge to everyone there, I will never knowingly ingest lab-grown meat because I prefer real meat. It's as simple as that. I don't need it to be grown in. My hot dog was grown in an oversized test tube. No, I think not. I think that's fucking creepy. Egbert Bootwhistle, French American from New Hampshire and enlisted 04, got bullied. Next news story. I am sad to say, again, did I not spend several months trying to avoid conflict with the DeSantis crowd? You can vouch for this if you're a clanker. You know that I'm telling the truth. I spent months saying, look, DeSantis is not all bad. I support Trump, but I don't have a problem with DeSantis. Originally, I said, look, Trump should run in 24, and then he finishes out. Rand should run in 28 and 32, and then give us DeSantis. He'll be at exactly the right age. He'll have had more gubernatorial and potentially legislative experience, and then we'll go with him. We'll have a dynasty. Trump, Rand Paul, and then DeSantis. Originally, that's what I favored. And then maybe, I don't know, Kristi Noem or something down the road. I went out of my way to make excuses for why DeSantis wasn't a bad candidate, was a reasonably good person in the sense of being a governor especially. And I still applaud him for some of the things he's done. One of the rare instances where I disagree totally with Trump is on the Disney issue. I applaud DeSantis for going after them. I think that was a wise decision. He may have lost against the talking mouse, and liberals find that funny. It needed to be done, though. Tackling their stupidity, wokeness, their company town monopoly, I think is a good idea. I disagree with Trump when he came out and attacked DeSantis for that. I think it was wrong. But I'm beginning to get real goddamn Bush vibes from DeSantis. And I'm not talking about, well, he's backed by the Bush family. I know that's a common talking point. It's not entirely true. It's more nuance to it. But when Ron DeSantis fans keep coming out, link in the description, by the way, you can follow along here, and attacking Trump for criticizing DeSantis on Memorial Day. Oh my God, because DeSantis was in the military. It gives me flashbacks as a millennial. It gives me flashbacks to when George W. was landing his jet on the aircraft carrier with the Mission Accomplished banner above him. And it makes me definitely uncomfortable. What we know is that Donald Trump, when he was president, did not start any new wars and wound down most of our foreign entanglements. He's the first president in a long time to do that, and the first Republican in much longer to do so. And he gets credit from me for that. I have every reason to believe that he will continue that trend if reelected. We're not sure. Something could come up that necessitates some sort of involvement, but I think he's averse to it in general because he finds it to be useless. He doesn't approve of it in general, adventurism. With Ron DeSantis, when he comes out on stage teasing his bid, and he says, well, I'm Ron DeSantis, Iraq War veteran, and posts pictures of him in full gear on a base while he's working as a JAG officer lawyer, and by the way, omits mentioning that he worked in Gitmo, allegedly overseeing the torture of numerous inmates while there. It really, really rubs me the wrong way. And here's the problem. If the GOP wants millennial voters to come aboard, they can't keep doing this sort of fucking bullshit. Donald Trump did well, in part because of the non-adventuristic nature of his foreign policy. He stepped foot in North Korea, for example. He was willing to shake the hand of Kim Jong-un. That's the kind of diplomacy we need, avoiding conflict, trying to use words instead of bullets to win people over to our side also works in a secondary sense. When you're not fucking around and fighting and bombing other people and instead are trying to negotiate with them, what does that do? Third-party countries watching that diplomacy feel more positively towards you. When you haul off and you start bombing orphanages, it doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't do the U.S. any good. It doesn't do the native population any good. It doesn't do bystanders any good. Literally nobody is improved by that. I am worried that if Ron DeSantis were elected, that he would start a war. And this sets off alarm signals in my mind. This was one of the main reasons I voted for Trump in 2016, because Hillary Clinton, in my opinion, would have started a nuclear war. She was openly laughing about what happened in Libya while she was Secretary of State. She was jubilant about it, made similar comments about Iran. And I'm thinking to myself, are you nuts? You're fucking crazy. Donald Trump, meanwhile, did well on this. And it's mostly his fans. It's not even mostly Ron DeSantis that's problematic in this arrangement, admittedly. It's mostly his fucking fans doing the gung-ho for militaria thing. Well, Ron DeSantis is right because he served. Donald is wrong. Orange Man is wrong because he claimed to have heel spurs or whatever the fuck it was to get deferments in Vietnam. You're criticizing a person for not wanting to fight in the Vietnam War now? Well, you sound like George W. or Dick Cheney or some other fucking neocon loser. You certainly don't sound like the new improved Republican Party that I'm actually willing to entertain voting for. There are a handful of people other than Trump and Rand Paul that are in government right now who I approve of. I don't have a problem with Massey. Matt Gaetz occasionally makes a good point. Lauren Boebert as well, although then they rankle me by constantly Jesusing it up on a fucking daily basis. The moralism and the warmongering of the GOP needs to be scrapped. There needs to be a political party in the United States that doesn't stand for bombing orphanages and then saying, well, Jesus told me to do it. Hey, the flag told me to do it. George Washington would really approve. Every single one of the founders was averse to even having a legal standing army in the first place. But fly the flag, everyone. This 4th of July, remember those who fell. I'd rather them not fall in the first place unless necessary. How is this an unpatriotic sentiment? This is why I like Trump. Finally, a Republican who didn't constantly talk about bombing people. What did you get from Mitt Romney? What did you get from John McCain? Bomb Iran. Hey, we need to do more about this country, says Mitt Romney as he prepares the bullets. How is that a winning platform? If you want to win with Gen Z, you're definitely not going to be able to do that. And with millennials, you're kidding yourself. It's almost like they're setting themselves up for failure. And Trump is the only one that can break them out of their stupidity, their insanity. Again, the only modern president, I think, other than maybe Carter, who hasn't started a war. Let's see. Not that I intend to compare him to Carter, of course. Economically, he's more like Joe Biden. Sparky, the globalist war on small business has destroyed a lot of great family-owned restaurants. Yeah, also Thomas's Dairy, just the same distance in the other direction from my place in Rutland. They went out of business too. When I go back, I expect half the places that I would want to go to be gone. It's bullshit. It's small town America. You know, let small town America be small town. Okay, there's some weirdos around. Maybe there's some inbreeding or whatever. There's certainly some illicit drug use. Okay, let it be quirky and edgy and seedy and weird. But don't destroy all the small businesses that hold the fabric of the community together. Alex Damon had a life-saving surgery in November, not hyperbole, and have recently started volunteering for veteran groups, going on the honor flight in September as a Guardian, and onward then upward I go. 4-year clanker. Good on you. Glad to see you're recovering, my man. Or woman, I don't want to, presume your pronouns. I've got to do that on YouTube these days, probably. Sparky, keep DeSantis in Florida. He'll be a globalist stooge on foreign policy if he becomes president. I am worried about that now. I gave him every goddamn opportunity to prove my suspicions, my initial ones, wrong, and said, look, I'm not going to dogpile the dude because he hasn't done anything. I'm not going to dogpile the dude because everyone makes mistakes. I'm not going to dogpile the dude because, hey, in the future, maybe he's viable. Did I not give him like 5 different chances? How many fucking chances do I need to give a political candidate before I can just honestly say they suck? And that's Ron DeSantis. He's made too many mistakes. HB 269 comes to mind. his attack on Trump over being indicted, again, eliminating 250 years of civic precedence. Wait until another opportunity to attack the man. Yes, we know that Trump bloviates and he attacks people. Okay, he makes mean tweets. He got indicted as a former president of the United States. This isn't about you versus Trump at that point. This is about civic precedence, and you should have just called it out and left it at that. It would have done him well, by the way. His support would have risen if he had done so. Now he's down at around 20 points in the polling aggregate. I mean, I don't even know what he's doing at this point. The Kiefer, 522. Happy Memorial Day. The day should be rife with recalling not only those who gave all, but also those who want us to forget history. May we never forget the lessons of the past. Yes, like the fact that most of those lost in all U.S. wars have been commanded to go fight in those wars by a bunch of people who would never fight for anything in their lives. That's what I remember on Memorial Day, all the stupid politicians. We should be strapping them with guns and sending them over to the war zone when they start some conflict. Michael LaRusso, great stuff, Sticks, a.k.a. Mr. Van Driesen. Yeah, if I didn't make it clear, I am extremely anti-war, and I will remain so. There are some people that think that I'm a cuck for thinking that way. Yeah, it's real patriotic to go throw thousands or tens of thousands of people into an unwinnable war for absolutely no reason so that Halliburton can make more money. That's exactly, as a content creator with principles, that's exactly what I seek to do. Convince people to sign up to go die for absolutely nothing. Shitheads. Ashley, DeSanctimonious and his fans are indeed giving me Bush vibes, but let's be honest, some of them never liked Orange Man. I think most of them did. They just see DeSantis as a more electable version of Donald Trump, and I can sympathize with the concept based on the age gap. But DeSantis is making elementary mistakes like his campaign launch. He's made, with the First Step Act, you've got a bill that was passed in a monumentally bipartisan manner, upheld as popular by the supermajority of the population, and you claim you want to repeal it. That is not a wise decision. Shut the fuck up about it if you intend to repeal it, because it's not a winning issue. If he doesn't understand basic political strategy, I'm wondering at this point if DeSantis could even beat Joe Biden in a recession. I shouldn't be having that concern, by the way. So I pointed out being in the military doesn't mean anything with regards to policy positions. It has to do with, hey, I know more about survival training. Hey, I know more about the Browning. Hey, I know more about how to maintenance a tank or something. In DeSantis' case, he knows more about military law. That is the only difference between him on that token and someone who didn't serve in the military. He was never a combat veteran, just a veteran. I don't mean to belittle anyone of you that's watching this that served but didn't go into combat. God bless you. Glad you didn't have to, because it sounds like fucking hell. That's great. But if you're going to talk about your experience and you're going to use that as a platform in a political campaign to convince people to vote for you, it's going to come under scrutiny. I'm also concerned about the fact that he served in Gitmo and was enthusiastic about gaining that position. Considering that everyone knew what was going on in Gitmo, that seems a little fucking psycho to me, actually. Just saying. Next news story. Erdogan has won. Turkey is under the same leadership for the next decade that it's been under for the last couple. Tayyip Erdogan. He doesn't like being called Tayyip, by the way. He's very thin-skinned and has had people arrested for that reference before. Congrats to the people of Turkey. You probably picked the slightly lesser of two evils. As I pointed out before, here was really the Turkish decision, the election there in a nutshell. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is an megalomaniac, an egotist, I'm pulling a Biden. He thinks his shit don't stink. He wants to be basically a mini dictator. He's ripping apart the liberality of Turkey that gave it a development index in the wake of the dissolution of the Ottoman era with Ataturk's reforms, etc. Erdogan is seeking to piss those things away, while also straddling the fence between the Eastern and Western bloc, partially wisely and partially very unwisely, antagonizing both sides in the process, while mysteriously trying to get to be part of the European Union, even though Turkey is largely in Asia. I guess, Eurovision has Israel in it, so, Europeans are trying to colonize again. They're trying to convince you to let them colonize you. Sort of what the Germans are doing in the EU right now with some of their proposed rules. Anyway, Erdogan is not a great leader. He's overseen a very lackluster economy, high inflation, a lot of state censorship and oppression, and a lot of shit. But the opposition was worse, which is why Kilis Daroglu. I have no clue how to pronounce it. I'm sorry to any Turkish viewers right now. Because that was basically, hey, Erdogan's great and all, but how about I be Erdogan plus communism? That was the alternative. I want Erdogan plus, hey, our economy is hyperinflated and suffering constant issues. Let's give more welfare to people. And we'll put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. We'll pretend to be more liberal than Erdogan is and pretend to be like Ataturkists or something, but really they're Kemalists. And we'll introduce socialism to the nation. That'll make it a lot better. I don't think that it would have been Erdogan ultimately. If I had been in Turkey, I probably would end up voting for him in the second round. And I've been a critic of Erdogan more times than I can count. I think I have a video from fucking 2011 or 2012 where I talk about the Turks when they were rioting at the time and protesting against some of Erdogan's policies. God, I think that was more than 10 years ago that I made my first video on the subject, I think. And Erdogan is an evildoer. But somehow the person running against him found a way to be more stupid. Found a way to be more coked up and nuts. So, yeah, it's Erdogan for the next day. Yeah, I mean, he'll die in office probably. I think he's on the older side at this point. We'll see what happens. I would expect stagnation in Turkey. I would expect they maintain their current policies, which is sad because they've got a lot of resources. They have kind of a cool culture, especially fucking cuisine-wise, and you're pissing that away by having all these people running your political parties. Simon Roper, anti-war was the heart of Dada, makes you pro-Dada. Yes, Dadaism is my artwork form. Not a bad account. Speaker McCarthy understands the definition of compromise. Give the other side everything they ask for, but humbly accept getting nothing in return. See, that's the secret. There are no sides in that. They're on the same side. They probably planned it together from the get-go, and they hoodwinked a lot of Republicans and Democrats at this point into supporting it. The Patriot Cairo. Gender dysmorphia has soared 1,000% since 2004. Certain medical injections, honk, contain DNA from opposite sex animals and human embryos. Interesting. Well, it's also a fashion statement at this point. And it's the only way for white males to escape from constant persecution and discrimination, because then they too can have some social credit brownie points. Not a bad account. Odds that President Biden remains in robust health. Yeah, he hasn't seen that in a while, but I have a feeling that it's going to be difficult for him to even campaign by the general election. Sparky, problem with Erdogan's opponents is they are sponsored by Bolton. Yeah, I mean, you pick your poison. You've got a tyrant that's more domestic and economically a little bit less depraved, or you get a tyrant that's partially foreign sponsored and economically speaking stupid, but promises a little bit more liberalism in the cultural sphere. So I feel sorry for the Turks. Not a bad account. Will Repubs raise the debt limit or punish veterans? My hope is that they don't vote to raise the debt limit. My hope is there are enough holdouts on the right and the left to stop the bill from going forward. It'll cause chaos. It'll get blamed on the Republicans. But what the Trump Republicans need to do is correctly identify, and they need to do this now before the vote comes up. They need to go to the public and tell them, look, the unipartyists are trying to sell us a pig in a poke of expensive, wasteful spending and a bunch of authoritarianism. We can't vote for it in good conscience. If hell breaks loose, it's not our fault because they intended to offer us this deal at the last minute. Take that story to the people, get it out to them. Your constituents, I think, by and large, will actually side with you in the end. We'll see if they're intelligent enough to do that. Sparky, BRICS of late is headed in the right direction. It can help prop up Turkey and Erdogan. Well, Erdogan's not the one that wants BRICS involvement. Erdogan is more Western-leaning than the Kemalists, actually. And BRICS is not headed in the right direction. They've got their own fucking problems. Next news story. 13-year-old girl dies from chroming. Latest alarmist social media trend. Oh no! TikTok has created a new social media trend where kids are killing themselves, right? Now let's read down through the article and find out what it's actually talking about. Oh, it's talking about using deodorant as a form of inhalant. I remember inhalants fondly. I never used them, but I remember stories about them. It's like salvia divinorum and crack cocaine. I was a little bit late to the crack party. Ecstasy in the 90s, late 90s. I can remember all of the moral panics with regards to drugs, especially as applied to young people. in every single case, it's either not a novel drug, it's not a real drug, like Jankum, for example, or it's not really a common thing. It's not necessarily happening very much, and it's dovetailed with something else. So chroming, the idea is that I guess it's chrome-based paint is the original usage of the term, but now they're using deodorant to get high as an inhalant. 13-year-old girl decided to huff deodorant. I would say, while it's not fun when a child dies, and 13-year-old is a child, do you expect that somebody who's dumb enough to snort up a bunch of deodorant till their heart stops is adding much to humanity? Someone who's conned into a social media challenge? I don't think so. And so, yeah, I mean, it's sad, but, you know, come on. There are some people that make it, and there are some people that don't. You know, kids used to eat lead paint chips because they tasted sweet. Just some people got more brain damage than others, I suppose. By the way, there was lead paint in my house as a kid. I'm sure that you can't tell. Anyway, talking about this, it's just a moral panic. It's think of the children. Hey, soccer moms, your kid, keep the deodorant away from your kids. And by the way, pass more rules to make sure that deodorant is not sold to anyone under 18. Well, if we take this to its logical extension, basically everything can't be sold to anyone under the age of 18, which is exactly what the authoritarians want. Lock everyone down when they're kids so they get used to having to need privilege, the privilege granted by government, a license or something, to do literally anything under the sun. And the hope is when they get older that they'll be more easily controlled. That's what all these moral panics ultimately are about, at least insofar as the government and legacy media are involved. The family of a 13-year-old Australian girl who died from chroming, so using inhalants. Oh, but that wouldn't scare people as much because it wouldn't even be newsworthy. People have been fucking huffing paint since the 1950s, fucking glue and shit like that. Has urged action to prevent similar deaths from occurring. So ban kids from speaking out. Make sure that they don't understand the concept of free expression. Of course, it's Australia, so they already don't have that. Vilify pedestrian products that are generally not misused at all, just because one person decided to misuse them. And I like how they always talk about these things as trends. Well, there's a new trend. It's called chroming. Okay, can you give me some other examples of people who are doing this? How many people actually use inhalants? Because I heard about them a lot back in the early 90s, that kids were huffing the whipped cream and stuff like that. I never knew a single person who was ever doing that. Not a single person in my entire life has ever told me, yeah, I used inhalants, man. It was great. Get some nitrous, man. Never. I've known plenty of people who smoked weed. I've known people who used all sorts of psychedelics. I've known people who snorted coke occasionally, and a couple people that candy flipped or used ecstasy. I've never met anyone that used inhalants. Why would you? You'll probably get brain damage. You're getting high because you're depriving yourself of oxygen. They had plenty of PSAs back then. Every sane kid never touched the stuff, never used whippets and shit like that. And the ones that do, are they really the kids that, you know, you care as much about in the end, as far as society goes? Or are they the ones that would probably just find some other way to off themselves because they're fucking morons? I hate to tell you this, but some of your kids out there, parents, are fucking morons. Let's be obvious about this. When they turn 18, you're allowed to call them a moron. But when they're 17 years old, you're not. You're not allowed to point out that they're a fucking stupid cretin. You're not allowed to do that because it's just a kid. Okay, 13 is old enough not to know to gas yourself with aerosols. I'm sure that the average person knows better. That's why it only happens occasionally. And that's why I'm not panicked about that. Egbert Bootwhistle, I'm voting in Trump, but in Massachusetts. Should I push for RFK? Well, in the primary, yeah, you can take a Dem ballot. Trump won't have any problem in Massachusetts. It's about picking and choosing. Not a banned account. Is it true refusing spending means hating America? Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the uniparty GOP right now, sellouts like McCarthy, vote for our shitty bill or else you hate America. Vote for our shitty bill or the recession that's already predicted to happen will happen for real. Sparky, Darwin Award. Exactly. Now, I know I'm saying that about a 13-year-old, so there'll be people probably, they'll clip it out and say, Styx hates teenagers, wants them to die, or some stupid shit like that. No, I'm just saying that there are some teenagers that are perfectly well put together mentally and know not to do this. It's 99.99% of them. When they are that stupid, taking the whippet away from them is not going to keep them from doing something stupid. they're going to do something else stupid because they are stupid. Hate to point this out. I know it's unpopular to say such things, but I don't care. The truth does not fear investigation. Pete Plumley, it's all going so badly that it's starting to look like a plan. Yeah, exactly. Terry T, I'm just a vet. Happy Memorial Day to combat vets and their families. Hashtag Clank Nation. Yes, happy Memorial Day. Get that barbecue going, man. I would say grab some Budweisers, but I have a feeling that most people celebrating Memorial Day for any nostalgic reason probably are reaching for a different brew. And then the final news story, and then I'll go off really quick. Mayor Eric Adams signs bill outlawing weight discrimination in New York City. So in New York City, you can no longer be discriminated against in hiring if you are morbidly obese. And I'm thinking to myself, what if you want to be a forklift operator or the attendant in an elevator or something like that? So you want to be you want to be a cab driver, but you can't fit in the cab. Are we going to have woke cabs? Well, we've got to modify the state law with regards to how wide a vehicle can be. We've got to do something about the roads too, because this 800-pound person can't be discriminated against. Oh, the forklift will not allow this 500-pound person in it. It's not big enough. Clearly, we need accessibility forklifts. Yeah, it'll be a far less efficient, might tip over, but we've got no choice. Under state law, we don't have an option. He wants to be a forklift driver. No criminal record, went to college and stuff. I know he weighs 6,000 pounds, but we can't do anything about it. We've got to hire him. We're not allowed to. We don't have any other applicant. We don't have a choice. Shit, this is going to be a problem. What about people working on ships? The weight of the passengers does actually matter if there are enough of them. What if your entire crew is morbidly obese? I guess your fish catch haul will have to be a little bit smaller to maintain your freeboard now, won't it? I'm thinking about all the terrible things that can go wrong with this particular bill. And I'm hoping that at some point something does go wrong that completely embarrasses the city of New York. The rest of the state should separate from New York City. I mean, it's like a different country. Go to upstate New York sometime. You're not going to see a lot of Biden re-election signs. Ashley, but sticks, whippets are giggle cream, and they make dessert funny. Yeah, exactly. I was always told when I was a kid that people would try to give me free drugs to get me addicted, and I was sad because later on when I learned that some drugs weren't really a problem, nobody ever gave me pot when I was a kid. Why did nobody ever smoke me out when I was like 12 years old or something? Must have been a bunch of squares in Woodstock and Rutland. Why didn't anyone say? Apparently, by the way, there was one kid. My ex-wife actually told me this. She had been acquainted with him. He thought that I was selling drugs actually out of my backpack in school. I had a rolling backpack because I was one of those nerdy kids. Apparently, some people thought I was a drug dealer. They should have asked me. I'd be like, oh, if you're interested in drugs, maybe you can find one for me. Egbert Boot Whistle, as a vet, and people say, happy MD, I'm not dead yet. Anyway, I'm going to go offline now. We've gone over an hour, actually. I lost track of the time. Making pizza tonight. Oh, I'm going to load it with mushrooms. So much mozzarella. Yeah, yeah, it's going to be a great time. It's the perfect weather for it. It's warm, but it's not overbearing. When it gets back up to overbearing heat, it's taco time, actually. Verona7881 sent €1. No comment. Thank you very much. And yes, Sonic Nader. Yes, I actually was back in 2008. So yeah, I'm going to go offline. It's time to do all sorts of other stuff, including a little bit more work. I have started Orange Man Big Volume 2. I'm also doing the second edit of the first of my 10 edited works for the year. So it's a lot going on. Again, link in the description, cross-platform, and pinned at the top. If you want a copy of my new work on the gun rights debate, you should get it. I try to provide as much material as possible for members of the militia to argue our case against the anti-gunners. And I think that many of you would enjoy that. So that link, again, is available at the top of chat on YouTube and in the description cross-platform. That's about all. Peace out.